Hello, well-educated Heart family. My name is Trent Merrill, and I'm teaching the World War II Heroes and Literature from Page to Place course. A lot of the course information can be found on the overview page for this course in the Mighty Networks app. I just wanted to provide some additional details that were not covered in the previous video, and to answer some questions, and then also give more information about the trip that this class can have to France, as well as the cost and some of the rules. Tentative cost, tentative itinerary, things like that. And so topics for this course, or for this video, include, I'll give you the final book list for the class. We're going to be doing a lot of reading and reading some fantastic books about awesome people that I think will inspire you, your students. They've already inspired me. I can't wait to share them. And maybe some of you are familiar with the book. So I'll go over that. I'll give a quick class overview as far as what the expectations will be. I'll answer some frequently asked questions. I've received a number of inquiries about these questions, and so I'll provide my answer here so they're in one place. I'll also go over the trip itinerary for our trip to Paris, or I guess France, not just Paris, the trip cost, and some of the rules. All right, so our final book list, the books that we will be reading. Some of these aren't new. They've already been on the course overview page. They're in my previous videos, so I'll go through them quickly. Book 1, we're going to start with The Hitler Youth, Growing Up in Hitler's Shadow by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. Book 2 is The Zookeeper's Wife by Diane Ackerman. Book 3, The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoletti again. She has some really great books that I think reach the youth in a special way. They're easy to read. This is a fantastic book. Fourth, The Boys Who Challenged Hitler, Knud Petersen and the Churchill Club. So some teenage boys in Denmark that did some of their own saboteur work. It's a pretty fascinating story. Then we'll move on to The Saboteur, the Aristocrat Who Became France's Most Daring Anti-Nazi Commando by Paul Kix. And then we'll conclude this first portion, or this first sort of theme of books, by reading The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. I know a lot of you are already familiar with that book. It is so inspiring, so fascinating, and a great way to end the section of people who helped others during the lead up to, during, and after World War II. Then phase 2 of the course, which will begin around the start of the second semester, perhaps a few weeks into the second semester, we'll read The Miracle of Dunkirk by Walter Lord. This is the fascinating story of how the British and the French, who were pushed into the sea, one could say, how they were able to escape France to England. Fascinating, miraculous story. Many people lived to fight another day because of a lot of the miracles that we'll read about. The next book, and this book will take a little bit slower as far as reading goes, but we'll have a lot of jumping off points, meaning we'll read a little bit less each week, but we will have a lot more supplemental content to enhance the learning, to talk about some of the heroes that we learn a little bit about in the book. We'll spend a little bit of time learning about them through interviews, podcasts, videos, different things like that. And so I read, in preparation for this class, I read 4 books about D-Day, trying to figure out which one would be the best for the purposes of this class, which one might capture the students' interest the most, and which ones would have more appropriate content. So we'll be reading The Longest Day by Cornelius Ryan. It's one of the shorter books about D-Day, and it doesn't go into as much finite detail about a lot of the different things that happened. It is more story-based, more heart learning based, I guess you could say, but it also moves the stories along at a quick enough pace that we can read a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, spend some time on YouTube, spend some time listening to podcasts, reading actual interviews and actual words and accounts by people who were there, really trying to understand and learn and be inspired by the courageous efforts that so many people made that day. And then we'll finish the course with our last book, Band of Brothers by Stephen E. Ambrose. And his books are super fantastic. I love his authorship. The way he writes speaks to me, and he writes it in with so much detail and in such an artful way. I love to do it. He does include a lot of dialogue that occurs between soldiers, and I think you and I both know soldiers don't always talk in good and beautiful ways, and so I'll try and do what I can to vid angel the content of that book, but also keeping enough of the content that we're doing the book justice and we're honoring the men whose stories are being told by not skipping some of those things. So the final book list, we're going to read 9 books this year, and I have them posted on the website. They're also right here. All right, for a brief class overview, as I mentioned, I've given it before. I'll just skim, cruise through some of the details here, but for completeness, I'll include them. This course is designed to be a transformative journey through the pages of history. So we'll explore the courageous acts, the indomitable spirit of World War II heroes through the literature and stories, podcasts, videos, different things that we can get our hands on to learn about them. This course won't just analyze the heroic actions and the character traits of the heroes that we read about, but we'll also examine the broader historical and ethical context in which they operated, how we can apply those things to us, what the story means to us today, how we can internalize it. I'd like to have a lot of discussions about, how can we adopt some of those character traits in our lives? We're not asked to storm a beach in Normandy, but how can we use our life for good, to improve the lives of others around us, to help make the world a better place? So through close reading, discussions, written assignments, which will be fewer and far between, but we'll still have written assignments, students will uncover the complex motivations, dilemmas, personal sacrifices, and all of those attributes that define the heroism during the World War II wartime. As I've mentioned, complementing our reading, we'll engage in a variety of multimedia resources, videos, podcasts, interviews, articles, documentaries, maybe a movie, and we'll use all of those things to supplement the learning about not just the individuals we learn about, the time period, common words that we read about, common, if we're reading about D-Day, for example, and they're describing some of the warships that were used to transport people or to bombard Hitler's defense system, we might spend a little bit of time learning about what a destroyer would have looked like at that time, what the landing crafts would have looked like. When we're talking about Corrie ten Boom's story, we'll take a virtual tour of her home, and we'll be using all of those different resources that we can get a hold of to enhance our learning, to help us understand it better, help it sink deeper into our hearts, so that we can know and feel and have these rich, enriching discussions about the topics. Through this exploration, through this course, students will develop a nuanced appreciation for all of the heroism in whatever form that happened during World War II, and hopefully be inspired to be a better person, to give more of our time for good, and to help the world around us. All right, now for some frequently asked questions. One of the main questions, and it gets asked almost for every course, and it has for mine, and I totally understand why. what age is this class most appropriate for? And I'm going to give probably the standard Well-Educated Heart Academy answer, and that's, well, it depends. It depends on the maturity level of your student. It depends on their interest level. I think a younger student could totally thrive in my course if they are mature enough to handle some of the topics that we're going to be discussing, or some of the topics that we'll be reading about. As you make the decision whether or not to enroll your student in this class, please keep in mind the topics and themes that we'll be reading about include things like war, concentration camps, racism, a brutal treatment of others. In some of the books, there's some description of what would happen to people who had been captured and were being interrogated for information. And just it can be pretty deep, pretty heavy information that we'll be going through. I think it's up to you to decide whether or not your student is good with that. I do plan on keeping an open dialogue with parents throughout the course, likely via email. And I'll use email to alert you of topics that are coming up in the class that we'll be reading about in the next week or the next 2 weeks content. So you can be ready to either read with your student, which would be super awesome, or just be ready to have discussions about it as they work through some of these complex situations and scenarios that they're reading about, as they work through it in their mind, so you can be there to help them with it. As I mentioned, I will try to vid-angel some of the content, meaning if something is coming up that is pretty serious or maybe isn't necessary to understand the story or the details. I guess the example that's coming to my mind is the book The Saboteur. It's an aristocrat who becomes a saboteur and helps the French resistance, and he's captured, and they are doing things to him to try and get information. They're torturing him, doing different things, pulling out fingernails, breaking his fingers. They get into some pretty gruesome details of the things that are happening to him. That's an example of something that I will say for the younger readers, for the students who want to skip that portion. We won't be discussing it in class. It's not necessary. It's not required reading. And so I will give information like that so that it can be a little bit lighter. That's really the only example that I can think of off the top of my head right now. Question number 2, what if my student isn't ready yet? Well, you're in luck if they're not ready yet right now. I mean, if you have a 12 or a 13-year-old that you think, they might be a year or two away, we're really interested in this content, I don't plan to be going anywhere. I plan to stay right here. I'm a lawyer by day. This is something that I love doing. I love teaching. I love history. And so I will still be here teaching Well-Educated Heart Academy classes well into the future, as long as Dr. Pablo will have me. And so this year I'm teaching this course where we're focusing more on the helpers and the battles that take place in France and on the Western Europe front. Next year, if everything works out, my plan is to teach a course about the Eastern German front and Poland, as well as the Pacific Theater and the skies. And at the end of next year's class, so 2025, 2026, we'd have a class trip to Berlin and parts of Poland. Then in the year 2026-27, I would come back to this class, teach this class again, and have another trip to France. And this would be the second time, so maybe it would be a little bit better. And so if you're wondering if your student isn't ready yet, if you think they're a year or two away, this course will be offered again in the future. It's not going anywhere. At least my plan is not to go anywhere. Life happens, sure, but if you feel like it would be better to wait a year or two, please do. I want this course to be the best for them. And I think that if you feel like they need another year or two of maturity before it's the best for them, go ahead and wait. I'll be here. We'll welcome them with open arms in a year or two or three. Who knows? All right, homework. How much homework will be required? And I think this is pretty standard for most of the Well-Educated Heart Academy classes. I will be assigning between 3 and 4 hours of homework a week. Most of the heavy lifting for this class will be reading. And I understand everyone has a different reading speed, a different rate of comprehension. And so I'm going to assign my readings based on Audible's reading at 1.0 speed. I feel like that might be still fast. It could be average. I don't know. And so the way that I'll base the homeworks on is probably between 2.5 and 3.5 hours of reading per week at Audible 1.0 speed. And then in addition to that, I'll have videos, podcasts, just different things to help enhance the things that we're learning. I might have map exercises as you read a book, sometimes they get heavy into, they move from this city to that city, and this person was in this city, and the bombing happened at that city. And so we might just have, here is a map of France, and we'll fill out the map as we read the book so that we can understand the geography. But all of those things will be less than 4 hours a week. If I have more of a written assignment, I'll have less reading. I will balance that so that you can expect how much time it will take to get through the content each week. And I'll try and keep it as steady as possible. If there is a light week coming up, I will alert you beforehand. But it should always be between 3 and 4 hours, so you can plan on that. All right, our trip itinerary. Tentatively, the trip will begin in the United States on May 25th. And I say that depends on where you're traveling from. If you're already in Europe, this won't be the case. If you're traveling from the West Coast, maybe it will start on May 24th. So the May 25th is a Sunday, and I scheduled the first day to be on a Sunday. Most of the flights that leave the East Coast, at least, leave in the evening, and so you could still have your Sunday, go to church, finish packing your stuff, and then go to the airport and fly overnight to Paris. So day 1, fly to Paris. Day 2 is a Monday. You'll arrive probably in the morning at the Paris airport. I'll pick you up, or my wife will pick you up. We'll have a lot of detailed plans of where the meetup point is. We'll give you a lot of the travel details, documents you're going to need, how to get through the airport, where to find us after you pass through customs, and all of those things will be ready for you waiting. It should be pretty stress-free. So we'll pick you up at Paris. My family is going to be staying in France for 3 or 4 weeks before the trip, and then again for 3 or 4 weeks after. We plan to have an Airbnb for us on that first night, and we will pick you up, take you back, let you rest, and day 1, or I guess this is day 2, so the Monday after you've rested, we'll go into Paris and walk around Paris at night, see the Eiffel Tower lit up, and then head back to the Airbnb we'll be staying at near the hotel, or near the airport, sorry. Day 3, Tuesday, we will go back into Paris in the morning, spend some time walking around there, see the Arc de Triomphe, we'll see the Champs-Élysées, we'll see all of those things in the daytime, and then we'll jump on a train to Bayeux. Probably not saying that right, but we'll be heading towards Normandy. And I'll tell you, if we have less than 12 people, I'll get into this in a moment. Less than 12 people, we'll just be in my van. I've got a 9-passenger van, and I would do 2 separate trips. So we would have me, one of my sons who are in the class, and then 6 other people. and then we would do that for 2 weeks. If we have more than 12 of us, we'll be taking public transportation everywhere, and my wife will have our van as our support van, carrying our luggage, meeting us in different places. So we'll always have a van to move around and be a little bit more nimble, but as we take the train from place to place. So, so day 1, fly to Paris. Day 2, arrive in Paris, rest, go see Paris at night. Day 3, visit Paris during the day, eat lunch at a cafe somewhere downtown, and then hop on a train to Normandy. And then we'll spend the night in Normandy. Then on Wednesday, day 4, we wake up and we have a guided tour of the beaches of Normandy. If everything goes as planned, we will be picked up at our hotel by a tour guide in a 9-passenger van, and that tour guide is going to take us all around Normandy, showing us all of the things that they know. These tour guides are fantastic. They do this as a full-time job. They're very knowledgeable. They can point out different craters. They can point out bunkers. They can point out pillboxes. This is where this person stood. This is where that happened. And they're there. They can answer our questions. It will be awesome. So much learning, so much growth. And then that night, we'll be back at our hotel or the Airbnb that we have, whatever our accommodation is, and we'll have a devotional that night to talk about what we learned, what we felt. How did it change being able to see the place in person? How does it change the experience we've had with that place, with history? How does it affect us? And do what we can, journal writing, to internalize it, to remember the things that we learn, the things we feel, and how it touches our hearts. It will be a truly awesome day. The next day, day 5, is a Thursday. We'll visit Saint Mont-Michel, a monastery and castle that is on its own island. When the tide is in, it's an island. When the tide is out, you could cross over. Really cool place. We'll spend a half day or 3/4 of a day there, and then we're going to travel from Normandy to Dunkirk, where we'll see Dunkirk. So on day 6, which is a Friday, we'll visit Dunkirk. After we visited Dunkirk in the morning and the early afternoon, we'll take a train to Bruges, Belgium. I don't think a lot happened in Bruges in World War II, but it is a super cool city, and it's not far from Dunkirk. And so we'll take the train there, or the bus, or sorry, not the bus, or my car, depending on how many of us there are. We'll see Belgium, or at least Bruges, Belgium, have a waffle, and then we'll make our way back to Paris. And then on day 8, Sunday, depending on when your flight is, maybe you'll go to church with us. Maybe you'll be on your plane already. We'll go to church and we'll send you home and wish you the best. It's going to be a fantastic week. So let me recap once just real quick. Sunday, you fly over the ocean. Monday morning, you arrive in Paris. We pick you up at the airport. We let you rest. And then we head into Paris to see Paris at night. I'm super excited for that. Day 3, visit Paris in the morning, head to Normandy. Day 4, we take a guided tour of the D-Day beaches. Day 5, Saint Mont-Michel and travel to Dunkirk. Day 6, we see Dunkirk, and then we travel on to Bruges, Belgium. And then after we see Bruges, we'll go back to Paris, get into Paris probably late on Saturday night, wake up Sunday and go to church, and off you go. It's going to be a super awesome trip. But how much? Maybe I should have led with this. The cost. So I have 2 different scenarios, as I've mentioned. If there are less than 12 students, I plan to just use my own van. Me, one of my sons, and 6 others will go 1 week, and then me, my other son who's in the class, and 6 others will go a separate week. If that's the case, then we'll have to figure out which weeks or when and work it out with everyone's schedules. But if we do the My Van or the less than 12 student cost, students they'll be responsible for buying their flight or paying for their flight themselves and arranging it themselves to fly from the US to Paris, and then from Paris back to the US on the dates of the travel. So what I would ask is that you are in Paris by noon one day, and that you fly out on a certain day. I'll give you all of that information at another time, but the purpose, I guess, of this is students will be responsible for their flight. While you're in France, we will cover your room, your board, your travel, your tour guides, all of those things for the cost of $1,100 per student. If a parent wishes to come too, it will be the same cost. And if we're able to save money on food and lodging, I've tried to be as conservative as I can in developing this price so that it doesn't turn out in the end that it costs more and I have to pay for it. So I've been a little bit conservative on this. If there is money left over after we cover the food and the lodging, I will reimburse the overages so that people can get their money back. So any of the overages on food and lodging that we can save, we'll reimburse that. If there are more than 12 students, still the students will be responsible for their flights to and from Paris. We would need at least one parent chaperone for every 7 students. So I would be the first chaperone for the first 7 students. Then I would really love to have another parent there for the next 7 students. And if we do end up having, say, 21 students that want to go, it'd be great to have 3 parents so that we can keep everybody safe, keep everyone together. It's just a lot of pressure that I would like help with if we have that many students. While we're in France, even under this plan, all room and board, public transportation, tour guides, all of those things would be paid for. We'll still be using my 9-passenger van, but my wife will be driving it, and she'll be taking the rest of my children with her, using it as a support vehicle. So in the morning, we'll put our luggage in the van. We will go on our tours. We'll take the train from one place to another. And then when we get to the new place, my wife will be there with our van and with the luggage. Everyone will just take their luggage, go to their room, and she'll help us as a support vehicle. If there's any issues that we run into, the van will be nearby and she can help pick us up and get us to where we need to handle any of those emergencies or issues that might arise while we're there. The cost of this version is $1,200 per student, not including the flight, and that's to cover the cost. Using my van, we would save money. Using public transportation, I plan to get a France pass for the week, and so we can ride any public transportation in certain, I guess, jurisdictions of the trains. All of the trains we would be riding on would be free with this week pass that we would be paying for. And that pass costs more than it would cost per person in gas in my van. So the difference in cost is really to cover the public transportation. But again, if we're able to save money on the food and the lodging, I'll reimburse the overage. I'm not doing this to make money. I am looking for an enriching experience. I want to share this opportunity with the people in the class, and so it's really just, I'm trying to get a quality trip for as cheap as we can while still maintaining the quality. And I think this is the cost that will get us there. Again, if we go over, if we don't exceed the cost, if there's money left over in the budget, I will distribute it fairly to everybody. All right, rules for the trip. If you're coming on the trip, you need to be at least 14 years old within the month of the travel. So if the travel starts on May 25th, that means I prefer you, well, I guess it's the rule, it's not just a preference. You need to be 14 by June 24th, within the month of us traveling, unless you're being accompanied by a parent. If your parent is coming with you, you can be 12 and come if your parent is there with you. So the rule is 14 without a parent, any age if your parent is there. We're going to use the buddy system very strictly. You'll be paired with a buddy, probably a buddy of your choice, and you'll never go anywhere alone. Not to the restroom, not to the pool. If we have a hotel that has a pool, you can't go to the pool by yourself. Your buddy goes with you. Your buddy is with you all the time. And at least one of the two in that buddy pairing needs to have a phone. So if your student does not have a phone, they'll be paired with someone who does have a phone, and they can't leave sight of their buddy. It's just a safety thing. We have to do it. I'm going to be very strict with it. I'm really a pretty easygoing, lenient person, but when it comes to these rules, I won't be. And so if they seem strict to you, you have to agree to them to come. Otherwise, it won't be fun for either of us. All right, the next, rule number 3, there will be a strict curfew that begins as soon as the group arrives for the evening at our hotel or Airbnb, hostel, wherever it is that we're staying, unless the whole group is leaving together. That means students won't leave the hotel, Airbnb, hostel, unless they're with the entire group. Breaking this rule would mean the students either fly home early, if we can arrange it, or they spend the rest of the week with my wife and children, which is awesome. I mean, maybe I break the rule just so I can do that. I'm just kidding. But I'm going to be very strict with these rules. We can't be messing around with safety. We can't be leaving the group. We can't be doing things that will put ourselves in jeopardy, put our safety in jeopardy. I'm going to be very strict on these. And like I said, if you break the rules, we'll arrange for you to go home early, or you'll spend the week with my wife, which is still fun, I guess. Maybe that's not a punishment, but we have to follow the rules. Number, what is this, 4? Absolutely no alcohol, no tobacco, no vaping, etc. No drugs. Also, no pairing off with someone from the other gender. We're not going to be doing any of that stuff. Again, I'll enforce it strictly. I don't think I'll have any problems. Well-educated heart youth are awesome. I just need to have the rule there. So none of that. Rule number 5, be respectful. And 6, I guess it's not a rule, but you can bring your own money. We will be covering food, room, board, all that stuff. If you want to bring money for souvenirs, all that stuff, go ahead and do it. All right, that's my video. This is gonna be a super awesome class. I can't wait. I can't wait to learn about these people with you, to discuss their lives, to be inspired, to learn, to grow, to feel that energy and excitement and admiration for these people and what they went through. I can't wait to feel that, to continue to grow and to learn and to do it all with you guys. Please reach out to me on the Well-Educated Heart Academy platform, Mighty Networks, if you have any additional questions. I try to get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the class. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great rest of your summer.